Wildlife sightings are inevitable in Greenwood Village. Because of the abundance of open space, natural parks, running trails, and flowing waterways, the village has a perfect environment for these critters as our community's landscape provides adequate food, water, and shelter for wildlife to live. With wildlife and humans sharing the land together, there's a chance there will be conflicts. So, how do we prevent negative interactions with wildlife and protect your family and pets? Experts say it all starts with human behavior. So, Faith, what types of wildlife are the most common in Greenwood Village?
The most common wildlife in Greenwood Village are coyotes, fox, deer, rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, and we have an abundant amount of different birds such as Canadian geese and hawks and even some eagles. Wildlife like Greenwood Village, because they have lots of areas which are sustainable for them to live. They have all the food and natural resources that we provide in the beautiful open spaces and the Highline Canal and the natural vegetation that we have in the village.
Conflicts arise between wildlife and humans because we are constantly expanding, and the urbanization that we are seeing in Colorado is expanding into more and more wildlife habitat and open space areas. And so anytime we as humans move into areas where wildlife have previously existed, we're basically taking their habitat over. Every wildlife species need 4 elements of habitat: food, water, shelter, and space. And when we start developing areas, our man-made communities provide a lot of those elements of habitat for these animals. And so that is the main reason why we see the conflicts start to arise. In an urban setting, you could make a case for any wildlife species at some point in time creating a conflict of some nature. But I would probably say that the most common species we get most of our reports on are coyotes. These animals behave so differently in the urban area compared to more rural areas, whether you're talking about natural forested areas up west of town or out east of town when you've got agricultural and farming lands. Out there, they are nuisance animals and they are constantly managed. Here in the metro area, these animals basically have no predators. They are free to do what they want. They can basically rely on our habitat for everything that they need, and so it is up to humans to recognize what we can do to teach them how to behave appropriately in our urban ecosystems through a variety of means.
If you live in Greenwood Village, you are certain to witness a coyote nearby or even cross paths with one on your daily walk. Most of the time, coyotes will scatter when they see people, but on occasion, they will test their limits around humans.
A coyote is not going to differentiate a domestic pet. Our dogs, our cats, our birds, our chickens and ducks that we may have in the backyard. They don't differentiate those animals from squirrels and rabbits and mice and rodents and turkeys and all the stuff that we want them to eat. They see fur or feathers and they see food. They basically will take advantage of whatever we offer for them. And so as a result of that, they kind of need to be reminded at times where we want them to be, what we expect them to do, and any areas where they are not wanted, like backyards and parks and that sort of a thing, where humans consistently coexist. We want to instill in them that natural fear through hazing and through other means. The peak conflict times would be breeding season and denning season. Breeding season for coyotes typically can start as early as December and last through generally January or February. That's when we tend to see a lot of the males being incredibly active, protecting territories, protecting their mates, getting into aggressive encounters with larger dogs because they deem those animals a threat to their territories and their mates. And then during the denning season, which occurs usually mid to late April, starting as early and then go into June even. You got the moms that have their pups in the den. They are very protective of those dens, so anytime an animal or a person gets close, they are going to protect their babies. Now, it may not be in an aggressive encounter. A lot of times coyotes will exhibit what's called shadowing behavior or escort behavior, where a coyote will basically follow a person or an animal until they feel it's a safe distance away from their den. And then once they deem it not a threat anymore, they'll return back to their original location. Coyotes are naturally inquisitive animals, and so a lot of times, you'll get animals that'll follow people or pets just out of mere curiosity, wondering what they are. Is it a food item? Is it a mate for me? Is it an animal I might want to play with? I don't know. If they are getting fed in urban areas, sometimes they'll follow looking for food items, and leading up to vocalizations, yips, barks, growls, howls. They are a dog, and they will exhibit a lot of the same types of vocalizations that our domestic dogs will, up until aggressive type behavior as well, where they're baring teeth and they're growling and they're laying back their ears, or they're raising their hackles, their hair on their neck. Any of those kinds of things can definitely be deemed an aggressive show of behavior in some form or fashion with these animals.
What are some human behavior issues that result in coyote conflicts?
Many things that humans do that increase conflict with coyotes are leaving pet food outside, leaving water outside, leaving unsecured trash containers outside, walking their dogs off leash, leaving dog bones outside, leaving their pets outside unattended, and especially when you go on vacation and you remove your dog from the yard. Oftentimes coyotes feel that this is their time to take over that space as well and make it their own. And so when you bring your dogs back from vacation, you need to be especially diligent to make sure there aren't more coyotes that have taken possession of your property before you turn your dogs out in your backyard. The most common human behavior issues that affect people and wildlife are leaving bird feeders in their backyard. That attracts rabbits and birds, which also attract the fox, which in turn attracts all the other wildlife, because then they view that as a food source. It's unintentional, but something that if they could really remove would be very beneficial. If you have a garden, it should be secured, because lots of wildlife like to eat gardens. A fence isn't going to keep wildlife out of your property.
Although you may think that walking your dog without a leash or leaving your pet's food outside is not harmless, it's actually harmful to your family and your pet. Here are some tips to help you avoid conflicts with coyotes in your neighborhood.
The most important thing people can do to prevent coyote encounters and conflicts would be education. Educating of themselves with respect to the laws, what coyotes do in a biological sense. Just having a little bit of knowledge on their behavior can go a long way to helping humans frame their behavior into an appropriate manner for when they're out recreating. Educating themselves on responsible pet ownership, supervision of pets, leash laws, not feeding wildlife, any of those kinds of things that they can do individually, and then sharing with their communities, I think is a great way to get everybody on board. And education can lead to hazing, which I think is a secondary component, but equally important as well.
What can Greenwood Village citizens do to prevent coyote conflicts at home?
Never feed coyotes. Intentionally feeding coyotes in Greenwood Village is illegal. Remove attractants from your yard, such as pet food, water sources, bird feeders, and fallen fruit. You should also secure trash in a container with a secure lid that wildlife can't get into. Also, trim up your vegetation to reduce hiding places. This will discourage wildlife from being in your yard because they won't have a place to hide from their predators as well. The best thing that Greenwood Village residents can do to protect their pets from coyotes is to keep them on a 6-foot leash or shorter when walking, and always be observant of their surroundings. And never allow your pets to play with a coyote. Oftentimes people think the coyote wants to play with their dog, but the coyote is a very smart animal, and it's tricking your dog. It acts like it wants to play with it, and then when your dog follows it, it brings it to a larger group of coyotes, which could mean trouble for your pet. Pick up your small pet if confronted by a coyote. Any sized pets could be targets. Small dogs, large dogs, it doesn't matter. You should always supervise your pet when it's outside, even in your own yard. Spay or neuter your dogs, as coyotes are attracted to female dogs in estrus.
Once you have done your part to minimize the chances of having a conflict with a coyote, you may still have an encounter. So what do? It's called hazing.
Hazing is effective on coyotes when people use it and follow through. For example, if you haze a coyote by making him feel uncomfortable in an area where he thinks he should have the right to be, it scares them. So you should always make sure you haze and follow up to make sure you do it until the animal leaves the area. Some of the most effective methods for hazing coyotes are use of the air horn, and that's a loud horn that the coyotes always run from. It scares them very much. And you can purchase them in many places, small ones that are easily carried on your waist or in your pocket when you're taking your dog for a walk. Another method, if you don't have a horn, is to wave your arms and basically scream real loud and just act like you're a crazy person, and they will leave. You might have to do it a few times, but they will get the idea. Another method is to have a stick in your hand and wave that. The bigger you look, the coyote's going to be more intimidated. Some other methods are a can with pennies in it and shake it, and that makes a loud noise.
Coyotes are not the only species of wildlife that get a little too close to our homes and pets. Humans know how to stay a safe distance, but our pets do not. So we have to be ready to deal with these close encounters of the untamed kind.
Other wildlife species in Colorado can pose threats, outside of coyotes. The most common ones that I would say, in urban areas such as Greenwood Village could see would be foxes and bobcats, raccoons, skunks. Any of those animals have potential for disease transmission to animals. They can obviously do the same things as coyotes in terms of viewing animals as mating threats or territorial threats or threats to babies. We do have the occasional, big animal like a bear or a lion that wanders into town. That's obviously something that we take very seriously and will not allow to happen. Most of them come in and come out just as quickly as they show up. But those animals, because they live in Colorado and because the foothills are right at our back door here, they follow up the creek corridors, and a lot of our open spaces connect to those areas, and they wander into town. They're like animal highways. So a lot of the same things that people can do to prevent coyote conflicts is going to extend to those animals as well.
What can Greenwood Village residents do to prevent conflicts with these animals?
The most important thing that Greenwood Village residents can do is to basically wildlife-proof their home. And on the Greenwood Village website, we have a vast number of resources. As simple things like putting caps on top of your fireplace so that a raccoon doesn't want to go into the chimney and make it their home when they give birth to their young. Make sure you don't have holes underneath your patio or deck areas, which is refuge and hiding and nesting places for fox and coyotes when they're in their birthing season. And on our website, it gives you a recipe for the use of ammonia, which is very effective in keeping away a lot of the wildlife that I've mentioned.
In Greenwood Village, we are fortunate to have an abundant variety of wildlife that live here, and in most situations, people can easily coexist with wildlife. However, we must respect that these animals are wild and that some can be dangerous. It's important that we enjoy the opportunity to view wildlife from an appropriate distance and never approach them. Our efforts to respect wildlife will help minimize conflicts.